Sheen shots.
Yeah, boy.
If you've ever wanted to beat Outward with pure brute force, then this is the build for you. I finally created a build that uses no magic or mana and still rivals the top mages. Make use of the most hard-hitting skills and the most hard-hitting weapons. I originally called this the Lady of Light, but after picking up a Manticore tail and launching enemies across the screen, I thought it was more appropriate to change the name to something a little less kind. Here is how you can create the Monster Hunter build yourself. The first thing you want to do before even leaving town is to buy an iron great hammer and speak to Burak with it equipped. Burak can teach you the Juggernaut skill, of which is the main skill for our build. It takes a while to charge up, but will hit the enemy with a tremendous impact, usually knocking them down. It will also inflict confusion, which then makes it even easier to knock your enemies down any number of times. It's a solid skill that hits with the force of a truck and often sends enemies flying, which we of course love. Next, you want to grab your skill trees. As we will not be taking any mana, we can only use a few trees without wasting perks. I went with Warrior Monk to start with. Anytime you create a tanky character, you'll have stamina issues. This skill tree grants plus 40 stamina as its breakthrough, helping us out greatly. Then grab Perfect Strike and Flash Onslaught. Perfect Strike is amazing and cuts through enemy defenses with a rapid slash. It also inflicts pain, which helps us deal even more damage after impact. Flash Onslaught is just for fun. It inflicts confusion, but we already do that with Juggernaut. So I chose it because it deals a large amount of damage and can be an easy way to avoid damage sometimes, since you essentially teleport to another dimension while using it. Pretty cool, and gives our build a bit more of a flashy look in combat. The tier 1 skills here are of course very important, as Brace is required for melee builds and Focus offers us an easy way to get the Discipline boon. Wild Hunter will be the next skill tree we take, as it offers lots of impact and high damage from our skills. The Breakthrough grants plus 40 health, and since we are a tank, that will give us more leeway to take damage. Predator Leap is another really cool looking skill that deals a ton of impact. It can also hit multiple enemies at a time, which gives you a chance to gain the upper hand, even against 2 or 3 opponents. Feral Strikes is at the top of this skill tree, and it is great as well. This will inflict extreme bleeding and pain while dealing damage twice. It is quick and usually knocks over your opponent in the process. I tried not to use this skill all the time, but it's great at the end of a fight and to simply place bleed on a more challenging enemy. Enrage is the tier 1 skill you'll want, and it grants the Rage boon, which lets you use the skills in this tree. Lastly, we have Primal Ritualist. I know some people try to stay away from this skill tree, but trust me, it's the single best option for both tank builds and no mana builds. It offers insane defense, the ability to attack with magic without having mana, and loads of damage that could decimate enemies quickly. The tier 1 skills let you place down totems, so you obviously need those. Sacred Fumes is our breakthrough, and it grants 7 barrier. This cuts down on the elemental damage we take by a significant amount, and with our armor we will grab, it makes us nearly untouchable to certain elements. You will need to choose between Reverberation and Nurturing Echo. I chose Reverberation, and I highly recommend you do not take this skill. It's cool, but not great once you realize it forces you to pick up your totem. The whole point of totems is to hit them so they increase their damage, making them deal chunks of enemy health after you get in 5 or 6 hits. Totems will also give us more defense here in a second, making it not ideal to pick them up in battle. Nurturing Echo is the better choice in almost every situation, as it allows you to gain health and stamina back after battle if you use it on your totems. Reverberation is kinda subpar at best, unfortunately, even if it is cool. Then you have your top 2 passives. One lets you use both totems at the same time, while the other grants 5 barrier and protection when inside your drum's radius. This skill tree makes us much more tanky, and again, gives you the option of just hitting totems for damage if you get in trouble. Primal Ritualist is insane and solidifies this build for defense. Now that we have all of our skills, it's worth noting that these can only be used with the Enrage and Discipline boons active, so making potions for those will be a little easier than waiting for Enrage and Focus to come back. On top of this, these skills massively take away weapon durability. Each skill will take out huge sections of your weapon's durability, leaving you with a broken weapon after only a few fights. To fix this, you need to do 2 things. Number 1, carry 2 weapons. These will be great maces and heavy, but having a second option in a different element is very beneficial anyhow. It makes you able to stay out of town longer and be more prepared for different fights. Second, always carry a good tent. You can repair anywhere you like with a tent, and since we want the stamina buff from tents anyway, we want to be doing this even if we didn't have to repair. This durability is an issue you should be aware of, but as long as you have 2 weapons, it won't affect your gameplay in any major fashion. We again don't want to take mana, so I won't cover how many points to take because it's 0. Do grab a luxury tent though, it will grant you a negative 20% stamina cost buff that we need in longer fights. We'll be taking the Holy Mission for our faction as it offers the most rewards and best defense rewards as well. We get plus 8 cold and hot weather defense, plus 20 decay resistance, negative 10% stamina and mana cost, plus 2 protection, and also plus 2 barrier and 5 protection, although this one is only if you build new Sirocco. Finally, we are given the Candle Plate Armor set. We will use 2 pieces of this set for our build, and not only does it look good, but the stats are incredible. Overall, this faction makes us much more tanky and takes away some of that stamina cost that heavier armor brings with it. With our setup, we will have perfectly fine stamina, which for a tank build is a bit harder to do. Armor for this build will first be the Candle Plate Helm. This offers corruption resistance, fire resistance, lightning resistance, and good physical protection. Stacked with our excellent amount of barrier, we take much less damage to fire and lightning. It does increase your mana cost, but we aren't using that anyway, so it doesn't matter. I do recommend you enchant this with the Lat's Sanctity. It will gain 5% lightning damage bonus and an extra 10% corruption resistance. Which is nice to have for corruption zones, and we will make use of the lightning damage later on. Our chest piece will be silver armor. This can be purchased from the blacksmith in Monsoon or the swamp region town, and it offers all kinds of things. 2 barrier, 2 protection, and 30% decay resistance. The Candleplate chest is nice, yeah, but it has a bit too many negative stats, and having this large amount of decay resistance with our faction rewards brings us up to 50 decay resistance without buffs. Add that onto the fact that we have tons of barrier, and decay-based attacks do very, very little damage. The fact that silver armor has barrier makes it one of the best chestplates in the game, and its stamina cost is pretty low as well. Enchant this with Spirit of Monsoon. You gain 25% more lightning damage as well as 15% corruption resistance. This is an insanely good enchant and again solidifies this chestplate as one of the best. Lastly, we need a good pair of boots. Grab those Candleplate boots from the faction quest. These have nearly identical stats to the helmet, giving us great defense to fire, lightning, and physical. The stamina cost is again decently low. Also enchant this with Elat's Sanctity, just like we did the helmet, to grant plus 10 corruption resistance and plus 5% lightning damage bonus. The helm and boots do the exact same thing for us, but double up the effects when worn, which makes them great together. Now, with this whole armor set enchanted, we get a lot of things. First off, it looks fantastic. The silver armor really looks great with this Candleplate helm. But we also become extremely resistant to fire, lightning, and decay damage. In fact, fighting any enemy using those elements means very little to us, and we can usually take a lot of hits without even caring. This armor also grants us a lot of protection and stagger resistance, which means we can not only take more hits, but block longer as well. This is one of the few builds I've made that can block a gargoyle's attack. They sometimes swing at you 5 or 6 times in succession, and it's impossible to block. But not for the Monster Hunter build. You can hold that button down and make those statues look like the idiots that they are. And lastly, we have an incredible amount of corruption resistance. This amount will keep you from being corrupted most of the game, only needing to cure it like 2 or 3 times total. The amount of stats we get here is pretty crazy, and with a lot of lightning damage bonus, we can really deal some damage. We will be using two-handed maces for this playthrough, and they specialize in impact. These things can knock down an enemy in 2 hits sometimes, and it honestly makes you feel like a beast. To get the most out of this, we will be grabbing 2 different weapons. A Palladium Great Hammer is our first choice, and it isn't the fastest weapon, but it deals lightning damage. Enchant it with Castigation, and you get even more lightning damage, while also decreasing how much elemental damage your enemies deal. This weapon has a lot of durability, helping it last longer in battle without breaking down, and it just feels very solid. The lightning damage with our bonuses wrecks enemies, and the lightning coming off the end of the mace just looks pretty super. However, we will also be grabbing the single best Great Mace in the entire game, the Manticore Greatmace. I originally planned to beat the game with just the Palladium Great Hammer, but as soon as I found this weapon, I used it as much as I could. The Manticore Greatmace can be crafted with a Mantis Great Pick, 2 Manticore Tails, and a Palladium Scrap. Not only do you need to kill 2 Manticores for this thing, but you also need to kill at least 2 Rock Mantises for their Mantis Granite. The Mantis Great Pick can be crafted with 2 Mantis Granite, 1 Palladium Scrap, and a Mining Pick. This weapon is much harder to get than your typical Great Mace, and it will be a while before you can take on 2 Manticores for their tails. But once you have it, you see how absolutely worth it this venture was. The Manticore Greatmace deals 24.5 physical and decay damage, letting it shred enemy health. It also has a whopping 60 impact, helping you knock down every enemy you come across in 2 or 3 swings. But here's the real kicker. The thing has a 1.1 attack speed and inflicts extreme poison. So not only does it have high damage and near broken impact, but it can also be swung incredibly fast. This allows you to be more confident in battle and block less, knowing your attack will hit before the enemy can attack back. The weapon's absolutely insane. It makes a lot of enemies pretty trivial because they can't even hit you. They spend the entire fight on the ground. Do remember that Great Hammers have the best impact attack in Outward. One special attack will give you a shove type animation where it nearly staggers an enemy's entire stability bar. This attack can be used with both of our Great Hammers to keep everything you fight on the ground and give you many more openings to use your awesome attack skills. With these 2 Great Hammers, you will have no trouble fighting anything that crosses your path. I also enchanted the Manticore Greatmace with Mole Pig Sai, so it gained a bit of ethereal damage. Feel free to enchant this with whatever, as lightning damage would technically be better due to our armor bonuses. Unfortunately, you probably will be forced to use the Mephinos trading backpack with this build. Carrying around 2 Great Hammers that weigh 8 or 9 weight with totems and a tent that all weigh 6 will load you up quickly. Feel free to use whatever, as the Buzu backpack fits our Monster Hunter theme, but for most of the game, the Mephinos will probably make your life easier. Once you have your setup, most of the game can be taken down easily. I mean, I didn't even need my totems most of the time. But for boss fights, you want the best possible advantage, so here's how to get into a fight with the Monster Hunter build. First, select the correct weapon. Some enemies are weak to decay, while others are weak to lightning. Pull out the Palladium Great Hammer for anything weak to lightning, and use the Manticore Greatmace in most other situations. The impact of the Manticore Mace is just a little bit more convenient. You're also going to want to use a lightning varnish on your weapons. We do have a good amount of lightning damage bonus, and infusing even our Manticore Greatmace will buff up our lightning damage. Next, set up your totems. This will give you more defense, and you can place them just out of enemies' range to avoid taking damage. Use potions to buff up your elemental defense if you need to, and then take a discipline and enrage potion. You can also use enrage and focus to gain these boons as well. All of your skills will now be available and you can use them whenever and however you like. That's what I like about this build. It just gives you a ton of options without requiring you to use anything at any specific time. Activate your boons and then just demolish anything in your way. Do be aware that blocking is incredibly powerful with this build. You should only be dodging elemental attacks, as most physical ones can be blocked. You have a lot of stagger resistance and will only run into problems with this against top tier enemies such as Scarlet Emissaries and Gargoyles. This is a very offensive build that's also very defensive. Eat damage all day without worrying and dish out insane levels of damage yourself. I truly felt like a monster hunter while hunting down those manticores, and after that, nothing could stop me as I rampaged across the regions, slaying any who dared take me on. This has been the Monster Hunter build, and this is definitely the no mana build you need to try out. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.